Hey, everybody. This is Diane. Oh, whatever. I totally messed it up. Let's pretend like we're starting again. Hey, everybody. I'm Diane Gibbs. This is another episode of Design Recharge. And Design Recharge is a live interactive podcast for designers who need to recharge their creative batteries and learn about the business of design. It's recorded live every Wednesday. And so we're getting started. And today, after a little bit of technical difficulty, I have my good friend, Brian Manley, on. And he's awesome. I love his work. Ooh, I'm getting a little reverb. Do you have two windows open?
Two windows? I have air conditioning on.
What?
I have air conditioning on. Is that causing reverb? Okay, good.
No. I mean two tabs open.
I do not have two tabs.
Okay, great. Okay, then never mind. It's probably just
we could try the crazy blue mic, but that might just throw this thing out of whack. Yeah.
No, we're gonna just go like how it is.
Good.
So this is Brian Manley. I met him 2 years ago at Creative South, and you kind of did a little emceeing this year a little bit, but you gave a talk last year, and it was titled, I think, Follow Your Weird, right?
Yes.
All right. So I always try to start the show off with a little bit of your background, and I know you kind of have a different background. And so give us a little bit of how old were you when you fell in love with design, and it sounds like it was pretty early because I listened to your podcast with Jason Frostholm for Creative South.
Yeah. For me, it's weird. Design thing I never took art classes in high school. I was always the band geek. I always played music in like snare line and all that stuff, marching band, and I was in show choir. So there may be
you were a drummer?
I was a drummer. Yep. I'm a drummer. And so I did snare and all that stuff in marching band. Then I, like I said, did show choir, which my mom this weekend decided, I did little jazz hands. My mom this weekend decided to tell people at my daughter's birthday party that I was Linus in Good Man Charlie Brown. And she was like, I'll bring the video next time. Like, we don't need to bring the video of me dancing with a blanket. I'm cool. So that's kind of what happened. But so I music and creativity were kind of always one and the same with me. And I always loved punk and everything growing up. But I just went to college and got a degree in youth ministry because I was passionate about helping kids and hanging out because it was really important for me when I was younger. And
you love Jesus.
Yes. That was a big part of the deal, especially when you work with kids and get paid by a church. But then getting paid by a church is also part of the problem. But so what happened was I always was into stuff. I guess it never made sense to me as like a job or someone would pay you to do. I don't know why. I just always thought it was there. I don't understand what Lenny's doing up here. He's saying hi. Hi, Lenny. It's very distracting. I have ADD.
I know. He says you need it on the stage next year dancing with the blanket.
I can do it. We can make it happen. Follow the demand. I'm back. So
sweet.
But I remember in college, like studying for youth ministry finals and stuff, and I'd go to the library, and instead of like working on what I was supposed to work on, I actually was reading like Communication Arts Magazine and How Magazine because it was just visually beautiful, and I like studying that. But yet, because I'm dumb, I don't think at any point I realized, oh, this is maybe a career. This is a thing that people do. So I just kept doing design. Or I just kept thinking about it and being creative and all that. And then, by the grace of God, my dad used to go to China and as a traveling businessman and bring home like bootleg Game Boy games and bootleg software. And one of them was Photoshop. Like, gosh, it might have been like Photoshop 2 or something. But I would goof around with it, and I kind of had a working knowledge of how it worked. And then, so when I got into ministry time, I would make flyers and do different things for the church stuff. And that's just kind of where I kept doing it over and over and over and over again as time went on. Yeah, Johnny, the FBI. I think there's a statute of limitations, but my dad has to go to the prison. I'll tell you where he lives.
Okay, so it started. You were doing stuff for the church, perfectly, but you didn't know kind of what you were doing. So you probably started maybe Photoshop instead of maybe InDesign, but you have moved over, right?
Yes. No, what if I told you I was just Photoshop only, but it looks like a ton of vector work? Insane would that be? I've seen people try to do that, which is kind of nuts. But yeah, so I when I was doing youth ministry in Southern California, I was good.
You were at a big church.
I was at a big church. It was a big church made of glass, so it's a little creepy and a little weird. It was like a TV church, but one thing that was interesting was a buddy of mine ran a record label called Militia Group Records out there, and the art guy there, Brady, and I became good friends. And he was like, "Dude, you got skill and stuff. You should probably learn Illustrator. That would really be cool." Because I would sit behind him, watch him design cool shirts and swag for bands, but then try to pick up Illustrator, and it was just like it's not working like Photoshop works, and I'd get frustrated. So finally, one day, just went to like lynda.com and spent like a couple straight weeks just kind of mastering the art of Illustrator in that way, and learning like all the ins and outs of it. And so then I started doing more illustrative stuff, like and it became simple and doing vector graphic stuff.
Okay, so one thing, and I guess we should get back to the questions.
Sure.
First, I guess we were sort of. So you started, so from the church, you actually moved from California to Atlanta.
Yes.
And you were going to get your first full-time design position.
Yeah. After I left doing youth ministry, just kind of being frustrated and burnt out on it and kind of seeing behind the curtain, as it were, buddy of mine gave me some opportunities to do some design work at his studio in Orange County. And then a job opportunity came open here in Alpharetta at a company that made digital download cards. It was trying to be that gap between CD and digital download before the world was like, whoa, this download stuff's a little too weird for me. And so they tried to make little download cards that you could buy. You buy at a concert. So instead of a band mass producing CDs, they'd produce these cards. And it was a successful business for, I think, a few months. And then eventually they ran out of money and capital and all that stuff and let everybody go. But the best part is you're an out-of-work designer. You just got to hustle, and you can still work. It's not like you need $400,000 worth of equipment to do your job.
So we talked about this last week a little bit with Emir and Jondon and Matt. And sometimes it was kind of you're forced into something, or you're never really at that place. Oh, I just realized I need to unplug my real phone too. It'll ring in.
What's a real phone? Is that the thing that's connected to cables?
Yeah. Oh. Okay. And it has a cord. You can play with it.
That looks like a prop out of the TV show The Office. I've never seen one in real life, though.
It works too. But we talked about how you're always hustling. Like, I think that's a reality that people think, oh, well, once I get here, I won't have to hustle anymore. And
sure.
But really, I feel like you are a huge hustler, and you still are doing a ton of work, but you're still but you have good boundaries, I think. I try
to. Yeah. The boundary thing really came from my background in youth ministry, where when you're working at a church, they kind of expect you to work nonstop, or some of them do. They expect you to work nonstop with little pay, like working through the weekends, and you don't get paid to take to a camp in the mountains for like 4 days. Like theoretically, you work like 300 hours worth of work, but they're going to pay you for the straight 40. And so, but one thing I remember, it was like you always need a break. You always need to like learn to shut it down and shut it off. Because a leader of mine back in the day was very like religious about clock out when you clock out and you're done, or you need at least one day on the weekend to just like chill and like recharge. And having those early on was really good for me, because a lot of friends of mine here in Georgia that I was again trying to learn as I went. How to be a designer. And a lot of these guys were the people who would like start work around 4 and then crank it out till 2 or 3 in the morning. And I'm just like, I want to just sit around and watch TV, or I want to hang out with my wife, or I want to just like do something instead of working till 2 or 3 in the morning. So I would always, shut off the computer around 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and then call it a day. And then now with having a daughter, as soon as I have to go pick her up, like I'm done. Like I don't care if any project's on fire. For the most part, I'm done until I put her to bed after she's punched me in the face a few times.
But you're not always going back to work. Like a lot of times you'll just do work again in the morning.
Yeah, I'll pick it up in the morning. And that's the other thing too. I'm wired in such a way that like I like to get up real early and get at it. So if I'm at my desk at like 6 or 7, like that's pretty good. And I can get a jump on the emails from clients in California who email me over the night, or whoever the case, or whatever it may be. Just I can get a jump on it, so I can get more work done. A ton of work done before half those people in like the music business or whatever are to work finally.
Okay, so I think just because of how you come to design, you took risks, and you had to have a lot of faith to actually say, hey, I'm going to make this work. And also you had to hustle. So can you talk about some of those kind of risks that maybe you've taken that maybe have impacted you and that maybe somebody else could learn from and be like, hey, you know what, maybe I need to kind of step out a little bit?
Yeah. I don't know. How do I explain this? I just feel like when you got to pay bills and you have to hustle, you just find ways to make things work. And the risks you take are just like, I didn't do a whole lot of cold calling or like, hey man, can you help me out? People always like were luckily either kind to me or threw me a bone or felt bad for me and kept me busy in the early days. But as far as risk taking, I'm trying to think, like really just going it alone, even when all my buddies were trying to pound the pavement and get like straight, like real in art studio jobs or like jobs in the design space.
Agency or something.
Agency, whatever. Like, because think about it. I have a resume that has nothing on it at this point. Like I'm as good as a kid straight out of school, or much worse because I have a degree in something completely non-related. And people don't look at your book if you don't meet the qualifications and all that stuff. So I just was like, well, I can do this on my own and just go for it. And the big part of it too is my wife. I feel like I'm fairly stupid, and I will look to her and go, do you think this is a bad call? And if she's all in, I'm all in. So that's kind of how I treat it. And
so just having her in your team. One thing I think you've done that's because you haven't had to cold call, you've made actually amazing relationships with people, and people actually really want with you because of just how awesome you are, just as a person.
Sure.
Sure, of course, right.
Well, no, I mean I'm
just playing.
Well, you have to if you don't have really good skill, you got to be a nice guy. That's part of it.
But you do have really mad skills. But I think that you started with relationships, and relationships has continued to be really important. But then it also really is important to know that you have to have that really good support, kind of either have people that really believe in you and in your design work, and that have a good eye, either if it's a teacher or another colleague or another designer. And I think you've had that too, but then you also had really basis of your wife being there.
Yeah, she really like locks me down in a lot of those ways as far as just being like, yeah, if you think it's cool, go for it. Like I remember one time we didn't have a ton of money early on after my old job kind of fell apart, and I liked photography a ton, and I needed a new I sold all my gear when we moved from California. It was just really out of date, and this builder in was like, hey, I need lots of photos for my website that you're building me right now. I really need some beautiful photos. I'm like, and he's like, I'll pay you a ton of money. I'm like, wait, I can buy a camera with me. So I was like, babe, can we go drop like $2 or $3 grand, whatever it was, on a camera? And she's like, all right, let's do it. And of course, though, that thing paid itself back tenfold over time. It was just that initial like risk of like, you have to make the calculated risk. And she always says to me, like, if you think it's good or going to be like, you're going to make some money at it, let's do it. This could be fun.
So somebody asked me today, I think Jeremy and I were having a text conversation, and he was saying, well, how did you do this? You know, I give these like little sketchbooks out, and I don't know if that's a really good promo, for Design Recharge. But I want to give people something of value. So, what do you do? I think no matter what, it's a sacrifice. So right now, what I sacrifice is time. I have a husband and a dog and 2 cats and some chickens. But I'm not sacrificing a lot of extra money, but I also we don't go out very much. We live in the country. And so there's, it's like 30 minutes to go eat dinner. So we usually just eat popcorn, which is probably cheaper too. Sure. But I think that, making a sacrifice, it had to be a sacrifice to drop $2,000 or $3,000 saying, hey, we're going to do this. And I think I can make it up in a certain amount of time. Right. Cause you have to have a plan. It can't be like, I think I might, you actually had a client that really wanted you to do it right then. Yeah. Right.
No. Yeah. It's one of those deals where luckily for me, like I'm a big tech geek and I like nerdy stuff, and, I like technology, and it's one of those things I use it to its advantage for design and doing things with my business. But it's all over the place, and some of those it's a big gamble. Like go spend money on a camera or buy a video camera for a video shoot that may or may not work. But like I love taking those challenges, or buying years ago I bought a ton of Polaroid film for a project that was kind of like, this may or may not work, and I bought it, and the band loved the art, and so we went with it, and that became the whole basis for the whole package. So, and it was a major label record, so it paid very nicely. And it was a good gamble.
So, all right, so you've taken some risk financially, you've taken some risk by moving and doing something. So that's also a risk, but you've always kind of had that relationships as a kind of basis for all of that. Sky or whatever. So let's see what Lenny has to say. We've had plenty of discussions about your love or our love for heavy metal music. I'm sorry, I added heavy. Just metal.
It could be heavy or metal.
Has your love of, let's say, Slayer ever caused conflict with your church or family dealings?
Back when I worked with the church, I listened to stuff in my office with headphones on. I never had a problem with it. Luckily, I think every place I've ever lived or worked, the church culture in that era was not so uptight. It's not like Footloose. It wasn't like they're trying to, pitchforks going after people because the guy listened to Slayer. But I remember when Marilyn Manson came through Fort Wayne, Indiana, and going to college, and the church community went berserk. I'm like, okay, that's one record I can't really tell people I own or was listening to. Fairly enough, it wasn't very good as time has stood, but never had a problem with Slayer. The only beef I get from Slayer is lately, or any of those bands, when I forget I'm wearing like a Slayer or a semi-offensive metal band shirt, and I just pop out of the office, go to pick up my daughter at school, and realize in the parking lot that I cannot wear this shirt in front of 2-year-olds. That's kind of a problem. Yeah.
So that's good to know. Yeah. You said something the other day, and I was trying to tell my friends at lunch. I was like, he said it was something. He said when he wanted, maybe this was me listening to your podcast. I kind of feel like you're talking to me. So that's how podcasts are. So it was something like, I want my daughter to be able to go to these blank. And I can't remember like what you called those shows. Like
hardcore shows, punk shows?
No. Boogers.
Mosh pit, was that a word popularly used?
No, I know what that is. Okay. It was like you want her to feel comfortable at blank, at like a going to, I can't remember.
Was it like, is it a club here in Atlanta called the Masquerade that is?
No, I've been to that.
You should feel scared every time you go to a hardcore punk show. That's part of the fun.
Maybe you just, I don't remember. Anyway, I don't remember what it was.
That's fair. That's all good.
It's not part of our questions today. So let's just keep going. So, okay. One thing I love is, so this also has to be with, to me, you being resourceful. So I also think that's one of your superpowers is your resourcefulness.
Yeah.
One, people, and two, with just using your talents, but also using what you have. And so me and you've had this conversation where you say, oh, I'm not an illustrator. And I'm like, oh, and then I say, oh, well, who designed this for you? Because you have it in your portfolio. And you're like, I did that. And I'm like, well, then you're an illustrator. So the Austin Archer stuff, I think is, I mean, and you do this a lot, actually. You take some images and then you'll add some other elements, or you'll collage them together. To me, it was just, it's simple but beautiful. And it was like, oh, it was just, I just love collage. And I really, you have a really good talent with it. Like, I don't know if it just comes naturally, if you've always kind of just played with stuff, or if that was just your visual, what you like to look at.
Yeah, it's a little bit what I like to look at and what I think is just going to be juicy and fun and or engaging. But a lot of it comes from just, and I talked about this at Creative South a couple years ago, but let your weakness be your uniqueness. Like, I'm not good at drawing. And so in that weakness, you kind of have to find ways around it. You have to kind of find, like, how can I sort of make it look like I know what I'm doing, but I'm going to use the things I'm fair at, like leaning on perhaps photography, or early on, I was leaning on lots of found art, and I still do like tons of found stuff, and in finding ways to repurpose like really hacky clip art stuff, or stuff that's like it's just kind of out there in the common, whatever, Creative Commons, whatever you call it, and using that to kind of create stuff, because that way those are tools that I can work with, as opposed to the tool of a pen or a stylus to draw something.
Boogers. I was gonna put up that Alan Archer thing, but is it coming?
Austin, do you have his
Austin
stuff?
Austin Archer, whatever.
Austin Archer, fun story. Young kid hit me up, liked some work I'd done in the past. He was like, my gosh, 18, 19 or whatever at the time. I did that 4 or 5 years ago, and did it. Loved the way it turned out. The music was all right. It didn't do well. Then all of a sudden, the dude's a really killer tattoo artist here in Atlanta, and he's tattooed me before. So we're good buds now. and he lives down the
that's
street from me. Yeah, so and again, it's all about relationships. Like I don't work with people just to go, thanks for your money and peace out. I try to be as cool and friendly with everyone as possible. Like maybe I feel maybe I'm a little needy, or maybe I'm just like, please love me, but I want to be buds, and like I don't really care so much how talented or killer you are. Are you just fun to hang out with? The forefather guys, like I have some buddies here now, like, dude, you met the forefather dudes. I'm like, hung out with them, had beers, and just chilled. And it wasn't like we sat around and be like, how tight do you kern this lettering? It's like, no one does that. Like, it's all about just how quality of people you are, as opposed to this killer portfolio work you're cranking out.
Right. But I think it adds to it that you do have a killer portfolio. Like but it gives you that other level. And I think a lot of like the Austin Archer, I don't know why I want to call him something else. Anyway, but I really like that piece. And so Lenny said, I think it's something we forget. We look around and we need to repurpose something. And it looks like it's like a map or something, right? And I know I
love to go junking antiquing, and I found some old maps and something, and some old books that we picked up for another project, and I just cut them up, and I tried to treat it like I just laid gels on top of it. And Austin had the weird ideas, like, I want to see a hand reaching through the earth. And I'm like, that's a silly idea. I kept thinking of just like bad like rap rock album covers. I'm like, folky dude, let's try this. And so that's kind of where we went that way.
And but to me, it's like you have some stuff that's really kind of heavier, deeper, kind of more somber. And then this is a lot lighter. Sure. But then you have some that it looks like maybe appropriating some images of like maybe from Flickr Creative Commons or something, and then you're putting red lines on top of them with a big old heart drawing. Like, I love that one. Like that to me, it's so simple, but it has so much of an impact on a message. And so you're actually creating a piece of artwork to go along. That one was
that one's for this band called The Used, who had a bunch of radio hits a few years ago. And it was a cool honor to work with them, because they're a band and they do well on the road. And they wanted this super duper punk rock, like Viva Independencia sort of thing, and like screw the establishment vibe. And they kind of pitched an idea, and they've always had this heart as one of their logo concepts. And so I just went real punk with it and went real crazy. And I told the label, I made them sign something that said, a lot of these are mug shots from celebrities who have been arrested and different people, and press photos that you can find on Wikipedia. I'm like, some of this may be very illegal, but you're taking responsibility for this. I'm not. If like someone comes after me years later, or comes after them. So, but yeah, I always like things to be important and have meaning, because music to me and the artwork of music growing up was super meaningful. Like the music was killer, and the artwork had to match that vibe. Now, it didn't always have to be super intense, but it doesn't always just have to be a crummy picture of the band like leaning on an old rusted truck. Like, that's just not fun.
Right. And conceptually, usually the album has something kind of going on with it. And so that's one of the things I think is another one of your superpowers, is you're very conceptual, and you actually create these things that aren't just so flat. Yeah. To me.
Cool. That's what I tried. Yeah, go ahead.
So Abby has a question. She saw them live, that band.
Right on. I did some things for the record, or for the live stuff, for merch, I think. Yeah.
Okay. So she probably liked it. Maybe.
Good.
Okay, so and Scotty said to tell you thank you for coming backstage right before he went on and pumping him up. But that's another one good thing that you are. Like, it's something you and I talked about. It's not one of your questions, so you don't have to talk about it. But like, I really do think you're a natural leader, and you do really could mentor people and motivate people. And so I also you're just really easy to do, and you're just super nice, which does really help. So maybe some people aren't nice.
Well, there's a lot of creative people that aren't nice, especially in all fields. Here's a great story for you. When I was young, starting out as a designer, maybe in Atlanta a couple of years, whatever it was, like the first year, the very first iPhone came out, and there was a line at an Apple store. It was one of those times we had to wait at an Apple store for like 2 hours to get the new iPhone. It was insanity. And I'm in line just talking to people, because we're just bums with nothing better to do on a weekend, and we're just trying to buy a phone because we want to be, cool cultural mavens. And I'm standing next to this guy, and he says, I'm like, hey, what do you do? He's like, I'm a graphic designer. I asked him, and he said he's a designer. Like, no way. that's what I'm sort of kind of doing. Again, I couldn't admit to myself that I still was. And I was starting asking questions like, what kind of stuff do you do? But whatever. He's older than me, and he just looks at me and goes, "Hey man, it's Sunday. I don't really want to talk about work."
Wow.
And I was just like, screw that guy. And the other day, I saw him at this restaurant that I did a bunch of branding for, and for the opening, like, friends and family night, he was there, and I made that dude wait in line behind me to get a beer, and just took forever asking questions to the bartender. Like, I just want to be like, dude, do you remember that one time 3 or 4 years ago you were a real jerk to me? And but I didn't, because I'm too west to confront him publicly. But that has always stuck with me. Like, I never want to be that dude who's like, look, I don't want to talk about it. I just, it's the weekend. I don't do my thing.
But you know what it is to me? It's like those people have lost the passion for design.
Yeah.
Because if you love design, you don't mind talking about it all the time or helping out. But I also think it's a mentality for you as wanting to help your clients, and you really get on board. Forefathers do that too. They really become a team player with their clients. It sounds like you do the same thing. But I think that's one of a blessing. I'm kind of glad you didn't say that to him. But you know what? It just goes to show that when you're just starting out, those little bitty interactions you might have with somebody else might make a big deal to them.
Sure.
So sometimes it's just about being really nice to the people who are, aren't as far in the game as you are.
Yeah, no doubt.
So, I know, doesn't want to talk about design. What a nerd. Exactly, John did.
Yeah, he acted like he just punched in and punched out. But he was one of those dudes who's probably been doing it for 20 plus years. So he was just like, it's just what I do. And like you said, the passion was, the flame and the fire was gone. Which
but I've been doing it for 20 years, and it's not out of me. Like, I love design.
But you facilitate that. Like, you work at it. You go to conferences. You read cool stuff. You push yourself. I think certain people go, this is my shop. This is my agency. I'm just going to sit back and like call myself a designer and collect the paycheck, but it's not fun.
No,
should be a little bit of danger in it. And
why do you like design? I know it's not one of our.
Why do I like design?
What has pulled you in?
Really, it was. I don't know. I always liked advertising and commercials and things like that. But when I was kind of in high school and like music just hit me like a ton of bricks, and that was my way out. That was just my escape, and kind of. And again, my parents say I was kind of just an emotional jerk in high school, but I don't think they quite knew how to deal with me. But I didn't know how I'd express myself, and music was ways, and just the music and the packaging and everything was just so important and cohesive together. And I just studied that design, and those things just like got tattooed on my soul of just like, this is what cool stuff can be. So that's what brought me to the dance, and that probably still keeps me there too, because I still love working on it. I'll take hits on paid jobs just because I like the artist, or I like the idea, and I want to work with them and just be buds and all that stuff. So that's part of probably what brought me there.
Cool, and keeps you there.
And the technology of things too. Like my office is just full of gear and tons of camera stuff, because here's see if I can do it. Tons of cameras back here.
Oh yeah.
And I love just old cameras, and I love just the visual medium as just a way to communicate something. And so that stuff kind of, I don't know, I just never want to lose that. And I always try to stay relevant with that. And that keeps me there too. So
Matt says it's one of the subjects that he doesn't sound like an idiot when discussing. I guess it's just, we all see something. So to me, if anybody ever said, did anybody ever ask you, like, if you had to lose like a sense, what would it be? And I'd be like, man, let's lose my hearing. But maybe for you as a musician, you wouldn't want to. Yeah, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think about that all the time. Point in time where I would tell everyone, even though I was being paid to be a designer, I'm like, look, I'm a way better drummer than I am a designer. And then at some point that crossed over. I can hack my way through a song or two, but I feel like I'm a better artist now. But it's a tough one. I don't know what would everyone here like to do. I don't want to lose my hands. Really is my big thing. And I couldn't see. You like to walk? Well, let's focus on sight or hearing. That'd be a tough one. Like 50-50 toss. That's a rough one. When I talk to people, like if I have a client somewhere else, I'm always like, hey, let's Skype. Yeah. Because I want to see them. Sure. And they're like, can you just use the phone? And I'm like, Sure, you can use the phone, but I definitely feel like they can see that I'm intense about their project, or get to look at them.
Yeah, it helps, but sometimes they just don't want to see you, or that you don't want to see them like driving in their car and being like, "That's a really nice car. Yeah, that guy's rolling. Why is he paying me so little?" Or the guy who's like, I have a client right now who you can tell he's multitasking like 4 things. I'm glad I'm not talking to you to see him being like just like crazy, frantically freaking out. Yeah, bro, it's cool, whatever, bro. And you're like, all right. So I don't want to.
Yeah, see guys. There are some beauties of being on the phone. You can do multiple things for sure. But all right, so a long time ago, Johnny had asked about Art Chantry and if he was an influence. Do you know who that is?
See, if not, that's where I'm going to fail miserably.
It's okay. So there are a bunch of people who are collage artists that just are. So Art Chantry is a designer as well. But
yes, I know that. I'm sure I've looked at the stuff, but I've never been like, that dude is like the dude I think about.
So that's okay. So do you know, Brian, when I was in grad school, like I guess I just was kind of an idiot too in undergrad. And I mean, I studied. And so I was telling Brian, we talked a little bit about the imposters and when we were talking in our test. And I have my undergrad in graphic design. I practiced for 5 years, and then I've still been practicing since '96 professionally. But and then, you know, I've gotten my MFA and now I teach graphic design, but there's still new things I learn every day, and I still feel like an imposter. So for people who think you have to have some degree behind you until you stop feeling that way, you don't. And actually, I'm glad I don't, because I think if I did feel like I was knowing everything, then I wouldn't be passionate about learning. But when I was in grad school, people would be like, "Hey, do you know blah, blah, blah designer?" And I'd be like, I'd look around. Nobody else had their hand up. I'd be like, "That'd be me. I don't know. Can you tell me?" And they would tell us. And and they were like, "Diane, you were the only one that would raise your hand." I was like, because clearly I'm the stupidest one here in the room. And they were like, "No, it's because nobody else wanted to raise their hand." And so, but it's okay to say you don't know something, you know.
But that's one of the things. But then you never know. I'll go down a crazy rabbit hole, or all I'm going to do is study the artist or study what's going on. Like, I don't know what it was. Just out of college, I was like, I want to try to figure jazz out. I just want to figure jazz out. Or maybe I was just married, and I just dove head deep into jazz and just studied jazz and jazz and jazz. Till one day, a couple of years ago, again, just listened to it a ton. I remember listening to some random record. I'm like, is that Art Blakey on drums? That just sounds like Art Blakey playing drums. I'm like, whoa, I have a superpower I didn't realize I had now. And that's the kind of stuff that's cool. I like studying that. And lately I've been doing that with like abstract expressionist artists and going to the High Museum, acting like I know what I'm looking at. Like you just rub your beard, like, this is really interesting. So yeah, that's fun.
But I think you just have to go, and you've got to just be out there. Oh, you got your red Solo cup.
Yeah, actually, it just has water in it, so it's not very fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Sure.
That's it really does.
My people are like, "Are you drinking
Diet Dr. Pepper?" Let me guess. Yeah, there it is. I knew it.
It's my favorite.
Yeah.
It's my juice. Okay, so let's get back to the question.
Sure.
So, one thing I also think you do, and I think this helps you, be a good leader as well, is that you know yourself and you know your strengths and your weaknesses, and that you actually aren't afraid to say that you're weak in something. And so then you push yourself. It's because a lot of times I think early designers like, "Oh yeah. Like if somebody asks, "Well, where are you at Photoshop?" Like I would hate for somebody to ask me that, because I'm like, well, I don't really value that so much. It's more about thinking about the whatever it is. You know, it's just a tool to use for me, is what I think. So, have you ever had anybody ask you that? Like, well, where would you rate yourself? 1, 0, I don't know anything about Photoshop, and 10, I know everything.
I never have thought. I've thought about it. I've recently saw something a few months ago about people posting either their resumes or other people's resumes, and it had their skills listed in some giant pie chart. And it was like, my understanding of Illustrator is 300% or whatever. And of course, like there'd be people that say they understood Photoshop like 100%. Like no one can understand that because there's some wizardry in there that could probably change the world, but we haven't found it yet. And I don't know. So I feel like I'm quite proficient, but back to realize where you're not killing it. You find ways to work around that, or we live in. I don't think I could be doing what I'm doing without the internet. If I had not if I like the other day, I was like, I need to figure out, because I got a client who wants to put a gold foil stamp on a record right now. And I was like, how do I emulate this in a mock-up that's going to convince them that it looks real enough to possibly, for them to sign off on it. And I'm like, I could mimic it. I could probably do it in like 15 minutes, try to figure out like, how do I would do this? Because this is not a muscle I stretch every day. Just went to Google and just saw a video, bing bong, 15 seconds later. Oh, that's easy. Boom, done. And as of this morning, the band signed off on it. So that's a win.
That's awesome.
Yeah, which is rare. So yeah, so I know what I'm doing, but I definitely know I don't know everything. There's a thing I remember doing ministry where it was a grid and it said like conscious incompetence or I don't remember what the grid was, but I remember being like, I'm consciously aware I do not understand everything, and that's where everyone should want to be. That jerk that I stood next to in the Apple line is like unconsciously, I don't know, I can't remember, but he's one of those quadrants because he's so cocky. He's like, I got to figure it out, but he doesn't realize he doesn't.
Right. And I don't know. And you just never realize your impact on people.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I know we're not going to make it about that guy though.
Yeah. Let's move on. But it makes a good story though. And it makes you remember not to ever be that guy.
Sure. Yeah. So I digress.
It made an impact on you for sure. So, all right. So what process, how do you, when you're working on something with a band, so and they want kind of an illustration that's needed. So how do you try to get across what they're trying to get across? Did that make sense?
Yeah, it's like the greatest mystery of the world is trying to figure out what people really want. Like they'll say one thing, they'll mean another, or the old, I don't know really what I want, but I'll know it when I see it, which means absolutely nothing. And I had that recently with a project where it's a popular band I've worked with before, and I will not name their name. I may or may not want to slash their tires next time they come through town. But they recently were like, we want you to work on a record again, and we want you to help us brand this record. But we don't know what we want. We have no idea what what we're going to call the record, but we just want it to be cool. Again, cool is such an abstract idea. So I mocked up a ton of ideas, and every now and again, their manager would text me and say, they thought about this might be an album cover. And it has something to do with, like, I'm being friends. It was a bizarre little thing. And so I mocked up this idea of just like an abstract hand holding out some flowers, or just like a hand holding flowers against a wall, bright flash, real crazy. And this is real modern, real fresh and cool. I was like, this is a home run. It's different than anything they've done before. Like, this will help advance them a little bit, make them feel a little bit more modern. And then they were just like, they didn't say they didn't like it. I just got the email from the next day from the label going, hey, the band decided to go in a different direction. Some buddy of theirs took a photo, and they just want to use the photo that their buddy took. And I went berserk because I'd worked this band for multiple years, worked on a ton of projects, and instead of like writing a horrible email, I had to cool down for a day. But you start to then question yourself, like, I must be a hack. I clearly can't produce like cool stuff for them. I'm losing touch. This is where the wheels officially fall off the wagon. I'm done. And around that time, as I started to cool down and the label people apologized, a client of mine named Chase Huglin, he's a young guy out of Fort Wayne, Indiana. He reached out to me. We've been talking for months about working on record packaging. And he said, yep, that's what we ended up landing on. So what he said to me was, his mother had just passed away, like right before we were going to wrap this packaging up. And he decided to scrap half the record and change it. And he read this quote online that you deserve an island, but I only gave you flowers. And it's about his mom. And I was just so struck by that. I had this photo in the can and of some other photos I had taken. And I was like, I mocked it up real quick and sent it to Chase as soon as I thought about it. And he was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. Chase is coming to me with a label with a small budget. He's got a small budget. He was just at my house yesterday, which is really cool because we were approving final vinyl artwork. And cool. He was just super grateful, and we were having so much fun. But I felt so much redemption in the fact that I got to give what I thought was a cool concept, cool idea to a guy who really deserves it, as opposed to these scumbag band guys who are just like, we'll see cool when we see it. Bleh. And that has been a really fun story lately, where I feel like we redeemed things by just the way it played out, just the way it worked itself out.
But still, you get it still hurts when somebody's like, hey, you worked on something and
oh yeah,
they just don't get it. But really it was about miscommunication from the very beginning.
Yeah, and the label apologized profusely, which is great, but that doesn't pay my bills. And it doesn't fill my whiskey cup. But it was one of those deals where I've been working with the label forever and was just like, we're cool. The band, on the other hand, I did that thing. I literally did this thing like when you break up with a girl or you break up with someone and you're just like, you go to the social media, you unfollow them from everything, you follow them, and you just like block them on everything. I don't want to see what your next record is going to be. I want to be a part of it. And I kind of did that. But now I feel like I've worked out my aggression, and here we are, and I feel better.
So I love daisies. So why did you use daisies?
Can I tell you that? Here's the story. I had the idea for the other band. I almost said their name. I had the idea for the other band, and they needed to see a mock-up quick because they're about to go on tour. And I ran to my public supermarket and just went to the cheapest, like corniest, like most flowery, basic flower section I could find. Grabbed 3 handfuls of stuff. I came home, helped me wrap it with twine, and then we took some quick pictures before we ate dinner, and that was really it.
So to me, white daisies with yellow center is a super cheap flower, but they really last a long time. Like they're really like it may be cheap, but it's like somebody who's going to give you sunshine for a long time. And so I always kind of like relate to that. Cool. Like that's my flower. Like I have a tattoo, a tiny little one. I'm not like you. I mean, not that anything's bad. I would love to be like
judging me.
Dad.
Are you judging me? Okay.
No, my dad would totally like disown me if I got another tattoo. But I told my husband yesterday, I said, one day I'll get another tattoo. But I guess it'll be after my dad dies.
No, you had to bring a conversation there, did you?
All right. Well, he knows about Jesus too.
That's
so
good. We're all right.
Living on.
Yeah.
But anyway, I know that really, what was I thinking? All right. Sorry. It was the technology stuff in the beginning threw me off.
Sure.
Brian,
that's all right. It's all good. We're going to make it work.
I love that you'd use daisies because they're just this really fun, fresh, like unassuming, innocent kind of flower to me.
I don't know what the other flowers are. They were basic, but I'll tell you the thing where it's a win, and I feel like I sleep better at night because of it, is it works better for Chase as a total story. I feel way happier about it, and the other band can watch their tires get slashed.
Whatever, you would not do that.
No,
You're totally
no.
Too nice for that. Okay, so we have talked a little bit about relationships with other people, with strangers at the Apple store, but one thing I think is another of your superpowers is your ability to, with other contractors or with bands or with managers, whoever, even client relationships, you have just such a rapport with people and you are able to gain their trust. And I know that, like, I think last week we were talking with, I think you came on during the Forefathers, I think.
I was on for a hot minute and then I got about 400 client calls,
So you were on for a hot minute and you talked about somebody asked about, or maybe I don't remember when this was. Anyway, somebody said, oh, well, it's hard to stay in the music business, but actually you've made this as a life and it hasn't been as hard for you. So it seems like you've somehow got something and you've able to hold on to it. Do you know what that is?
It's really about relationships and hopefully being a little talented. And you start, if you do a few key projects for bands that other bands like, or a lot of it has to do with the fact that one of the first big packages I did for a major label was this band Manchester Orchestra, the record Mean Everything to Nothing. And it was, I only got the job because the guy who had done the art previously had a little falling out with the band. And they just were like, hey, I just met this guy named Brian at a party. Maybe he can help us out. And so we went full force. But then what happened subsequently, this band has kind of created a subculture or a life all their own, or there's a fan base. It's like this Chase Hewlin kid who was over yesterday. He's obsessed with this band, and there's a whole group of kids like him. So I do a lot of bands for that world. But it's really about relationships and just trying to be as nice as humanly possible and as professional as humanly possible. I don't know. I think there's a certain, hopefully I come across like, all right, this dude doesn't think he's so hot he can figure everything out, or he's so cool. But I always think, like when you go to a restaurant and there's those people who just treat servers like scumbags, That stuff drives me insane, and I always try to be the guy who's trying to help treat the server like, hey, you're cool. Oh, there you go. I can come back to my server analogy here in a second. So yeah, this record, that's just some of the artwork from the internal part of it, but it's all pull apart Polaroid film that's then developed on paper. So it's a crazy thing, and all the lettering and everything there was all woodblock letterpress type. So I think I set the whole record up like by hand pretty much. It couldn't have been more time consuming, but I had a lot more time then. I was new, just starting out. But it's one of those deals where, that was one of those packagings and those guys are great friends of mine. I'm going up to their studio tomorrow to hang out with one of the guys in the band up there. And so it's cool that we've had these relationships that last forever. But again, like going back to treating the server nicely, all you have to do is be nice. Like they're grinding it out too. And there's just so many people that just don't treat others like they want to be treated. And so we forget that quickly. Like I go to meals with my folks now. I still think they come from the old school mindset of like, you're here to serve me and I'm going to custom order off the menu and I want to do crazy stuff. And it's like, Mom, would you want, if you were holding a little waitress notepad or whatever, would you want them to just be like grinding you out like that? And it's like, you can't do that. And that's why I try to treat people that way too. And now that I started working in some restaurants in Atlanta, design stuff, I see what those guys go through, and those guys work super hard. And so you try to be as nice as humanly possible.
I also think it's good to have a service industry job. I actually think people who are better designers who work with clients are people who were successful in either in a retail or a waiting tables industry, bartending, something like that, because you really have to be you have to be nice to get your money, but you have to be nice even if they aren't going to pay you. And you can't keep tabs like, hey, they came in last week, they gave me $5 and it was like $100 tab, you know? Like you just have to keep loving on them, I think. So
yeah, loving on people's key.
Absolutely. So another thing I think is so great about you, I just really love your work.
Thank you.
What?
I said, oh boy, here we go.
Is that you are completely curious and you just like dig in and you're like, I'm going to try this. Yeah. I'm going to like, it's like you love to play and it doesn't, like it stops me from doing work. So does that ever come across, or you're like, hey, I'm just going to try this? Like, it seems like you have this great kid inside you.
I think that's part of it. I think it's never growing up, a little bit of that is huge. Always like loving technology and gear and just being curious about like what weird stuff. Like Shane was talking about earlier, I have this weird 360 camera that I bought just because I thought it'd be silly to take. And there's an example of it on my website. It's the 360 of my office, so you can kind of interact with it and zoom in and stuff. And I bought it just because I had a client project that could sort of work for. They opened up a new barber shop and they wanted like interior, like a 360 of their shop. I'm like, this is a great excuse to buy a cool toy. But then it gives you a different perspective. Like Scotty always talks about with his perspective collective, like it's all about seeing things from a different angle. And that's that kid component too. Back to photography, I back there somewhere, I have like a twin lens reflex camera, like old Rolleiflex. And you look down, but then you see low. And the photographer buddy here in town, the old crazy Steve at the Camera Doctor here in Decatur, he's always like, this is the best camera because you see through the eyes of a child. I was like, that's insane. And that's how he always liked it. And if you look at photos taken on twin lens reflex, you kind of get that lower perspective. You get to think differently, because when you change your perspective, you think differently. And the same thing is if you use different mediums or you use different tools, you think differently. If all you ever do all day is like, I'm opening up Illustrator and I'm going to doodle something, I'm going to use my iPad, I'm going to doodle something, or my Wacom tablet, I'm going to doodle something, it's just going to be more of you doodling. But if you're like, what if I got out like watercolor paints and just started watercoloring this thing, and next thing you know, it looks cool, and hey, you got to experiment and have fun. Like with that Manchester Orchestra thing that's up now, they came to me with this idea of like just cool photos. I'm like, yeah, but everyone's done cool photos, interesting photos. And I just read about this process called like, I don't know what it's officially called, but you would develop the Polaroid.
You peel it off
real quick and smash it on the paper and roll it down and let it develop to the paper. And when you pull it up, it's real yucky and nasty and abstract. But it gives you a new way to kind of see a photo or think differently. And just using different tools like that are really fun. And they help make things look dreamy or feel funky or feel unnatural. Because we're so used to seeing just clean digital images When you see something that's analog, it throws you off a little bit and makes you kind of lock in and look in.
It's magical.
It is a little magic. I mean, I just did a packaging for a band called Real Friends, and it's pretty much just pictures of my living room because that's kind of what they wanted. But I did it all through a Polaroid, all in like an Impossible project film or Polaroids. But what I would do is I have this way that I can take a Polaroid or take a digital photo and put it on a Polaroid, and I would Photoshop an image and add lots of extra frames on the wall of my living room. And then I made them all blank, and then I ran that and made a Polaroid of it. So it looks natural. It looks like someone walked in, snapped a picture. But yet there's that one thing that's really thrown off, which is a bunch of frames hanging on a wall that are empty. And they're like, that's a cool idea. Boom, done. And it's like, I mean, it wasn't that simple because this Polaroid stuff's expensive and takes forever. But I just like working with different tools. And also back to what we were talking about earlier about your weakness, maybe I can't illustrate a ton, but I can hopefully noodle around and be kind of a micro expert in this weird, like new way of doing stuff and taking Polaroid pictures of people when they come to my office and stuff. So yeah, I just cataloged all my old Polaroids the other day, and it's been crazy.
That's a lot of work.
It was. I thought I was going to do a Polaroid a day for a year last year, and I started doing it, and then I realized I think it was around June, I would wake up and dread it, and it just became like, because it's expensive and you had to then go do something fun and do something crazy. So I was like, I'm done with this. But I still shoot a ton and shoot pictures of my kids and for projects. So it's kind of cool.
So, all right. I want to go. Can we go a little over?
Go over. I got time.
Sorry, everybody.
All right. I've got a guy that might come over around 4, but it's all good.
Okay. Well, we're going to go. We'll kind of wrap it up and we'll just have to do a second one. All right. So,
Shane, yes, a little bit.
Okay. Oh, I want to make sure I get to the images. Anyway, so all right, how are you at client interactions? Because I also think this must be one of the keys for you to be able to keep in an industry that's hard to break into and hard to keep clients. And then it's also you have clients for long periods of time. So you become family to them, or you are their solution guy. So how do you give us some tips on that? Gosh,
it goes back to what we've been talking about this a lot. I think the theme that keeps coming back up is trying to be nice to people and treat them nicely. And also,
but tell me what that is. So Dustin Lee will be like, well, Diane, you have to explain it.
Okay.
And I think Dustin's super nice, but he's like, Diane, you need to, like, you have to explain it to some people. So what is being nice?
Being nice. Well, yeah, being nice as alone doesn't pay the bills, of course. But I think it's always about doing the right thing as often as you possibly can. Being nice is like there's something that gets lost all the time when we email day in, day out with people. And it's just kind of like orders, change this, change that. Like having just a little bit of whimsy and possibly being like more than just, hey, how's your daughter? Or how's your son? Or how's this? Those things I feel like go a long way to the right people. But over time, you kind of realize some people don't really care. Like, how's your daughter? Good. Anyway, back to the changes we talked about. You're like, But you find those people and you nurture those relationships, and maybe you invite them to your daughter's first birthday party or hang out outside of work and get to know someone. That's part of it to me. Also, too, learning when to kind of just go, hey, I'm going to do this on the free for you because we've worked together for a while, or I know your budgets aren't super ginormous. Let's do something that we can both be happy about, but just we can both be happy about, but we can do it maybe cheaply or quickly or whatever. Which I know the Forefathers guys say you can't do it both ways, right? What, cheap and fast or whatever that thing was.
Good, fast, and cheap.
Good, fast, cheap. Too. Yeah. So, but sometimes you can do that if you've got a relationship with a buddy. And I think that's just kind of nice. Like, I don't know. So it's about relationships, being nice, trying to do the right thing, even though it's probably going to drive you a little bit more nuts.
And maybe being authentic, like asking about them outside of work, not just their work life.
Yeah. And you're not going to be nice and the nice guy all the time. But like, if you can just have you genuinely seem you care. I respond best to people who genuinely seemingly care about me. If they're looking at me for like something I can get or they can get from me, that drives me crazy. But if we can just see eye to eye, like again, going to a conference like Creative South, and I can be rubbing elbows with people who are like the leaders of the industry and of the world, I really don't care about really what they're doing as much as just how cool or nice of a person they are. And that was actually something walking around Creative South this year, that it's like, not to get spiritual, I don't know if it was the voice of God or my brain or Satan or what, but in my head, I just heard, as I was walking over, I just had this piece of like, I don't care what you do, I care about who you are. And if that can hopefully, I think if you focus that way, not what can I get from you? How can I like wring out some more client work from you? Like just, hey, let it come to you. And hopefully that's been my approach, and where hopefully people see that and go, hey, this guy's hopefully honest. I think as running a business, people always think you're trying to hijack them and are trying to like pilfer money from them. And if you can work around that and help them feel comfortable with that as they write you big checks, that's good.
Well, and I think you get on their team and you no holes barred, like we're going to make this dream happen. And I feel like that's what we are as designers. We're dream makers. Yep. And because somebody has this idea of an album or somebody has an idea of a business and they need somebody. And at some point, Coca-Cola was just a dream, an idea. You know, Walt Disney was an idea. It was just something, but somebody had to make it happen and somebody had to do kind of the legwork. And Johnny said earlier, you know, like people just think we goof off on our computers all day. And, you know, we do get to play, but there is a lot of thought that goes into what we're doing because we are trying to communicate, because it is something that you have to do for that person. And we understand that. We're kind of like the designer behind or the magician behind the curtain. We don't get seen a lot, right? Yeah. So this is one question I wanted to ask you and we'll end with this one.
We got some time. We can do a little bit as long as everyone else wants to hang out.
So this to me is another thing that you've done really well, and I would love to know how to do this and what to do. So how do you go from being like an independent contractor for a label or a band or a company to being a designer on retainer?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I don't have a ton of retainer work, but I have enough that I feel like, whoa, holy cow, I have retainer work.
But how'd you get your first one?
What it does, you have to prove yourself. And in both cases, for me, the big two ones I'm thinking of right now, you have to prove yourself. And for a couple of years, in my case, you had to hammer it out and you had to prove that you could do it and you were trustworthy. Because no one wants to just go, here's a giant chunk of change, like, I'll trust you forever. You have to earn their trust, and then you have to do killer work, and you have to be on time. You have to deliver when you have to deliver. You have to answer the phone. You have to answer the phone. And again, gosh, it sounds like I just keep saying the same thing, but it's about relationship. And a little bit like with loyalty. Like my buddy Kevin, who brought me on board he's like a celebrity chef guy, and he brought me on board his restaurant group to pretty much be the creative director, because we just had, for about a year, we did some like project work, one-off stuff, and just hit it off. I think we maybe did project work piece by piece for a couple of years. And then finally last year, I was like, dude, let's do more cool stuff together. Like, I'll give you more time in the process. You give me a few more nickels, we'll make it work. And, but like he trusts me and I trust him. We're both loyal to each other. I probably work harder for him than I do for most people because I like him. I like the people that are at the restaurant and stuff. And we, it's a good rapport. But as far as how to take it that level, it's kind of like asking a girl out on a date. Like you just have to kind of go, are we ready for this yet? Does this need to go here? You know, and you kind of have to just, in my opinion, you have to approach it that way. Because piecemealing things hour by hour can just get cumbersome if there's a big chunk of work.
Absolutely. But so how do you have that first conversation, or how do you change somebody who you've had for 10 years and say, hey, let's do retainer? Because if you're already doing a lot of that work and it's just piecemeal, it would be better for them, because then they're just getting these big chunks of bills, I guess. Yeah. But I mean, honestly, I'm asking for myself.
Well, honestly, I don't have a couple, but also you have to consider you're doing them a favor by helping them estimate their billing. And if they feel there's a value in, instead of it being like this all the time, like up and down, it's just like this. We know where the money's going. And in a restaurant where like there's budgets that just are crazy and all over the place, there's one thing that's consistent. Like you're paying me X a month, and that's where we're going to be. And I have a little caveat that's like, if it gets super insane, like all of a sudden you're like, dude, can you do me like 400 logos by Tuesday? Like we have to talk about how much that's going to cost, like $1 bazillion. But
Do you talk about how many hours a week or hours a month that you're putting in for that rate?
They want to feel like, again, it's only a couple different clients of mine, but they want to feel like they get that you're going to be available, that you're priority on the list, and that you're going to be around when they need to run something past you. And you have to kind of communicate like you're going to get 15, 20 hours a month from me or whatever the number is. And like I'll be there when you call, and like other clients have to realize they got to kind of drop down a few clicks to crank on your work. And it's just about setting expectations. And if you know that client well enough and you've been working with them long enough, you know that communication style, you just approach that and say, and you write it out super duper clear and say, here's what I think we should do. And if they're any good, they'll look at it and go, how about we tweak this? Because hopefully they feel like it's a negotiation a little bit, like, hey, we can work out a deal. Because I approached a client of mine with an idea and they're like, that thing's not going to work. And so we had to go back and hammer it back out. But when we did, everyone was happy with it and everyone was cool with it.
So John just said a black airplane, John Howard. He has another great listen from Creative South podcast. But he said we also give him a discount. So say your hourly rate is $100 an hour. And then do you go down to 90 or 75 or something just for signing? And then they always is that at 20 hours, you're giving them 20 hours at that rate? Or is it some other kind of math whiz thing that I don't know?
I think it's one of those deals where it has to make sense to you, and everyone has to be comfortable with like how you're going to do it. Because if you're giving them, they'll say 20 hours a month, and you just know you don't have that time, like you're going to make everyone really, really mad. You just have to figure out like how your relationship has gone in the past, look back at your old invoices, how timing worked out for things. And you have to do a lot of homework on the front end to go, all right, the past 2 years of this client, we've kind of done it this way. Let's make it better, give them a value add. And like what Johnny just said, like access and focus, like you kind of pitch to them like, look, you're going to get my full attention. And like, I pick up the phone every time, even if I'm in another meeting. And so it's that value add thing. Like when you're watching an infomercial, like if you call now, I'll send you 2 ShamWows. And that's kind of the deal. And that's kind of the little deal with that.
Well, I guess I feel like when you're doing this, like I think a good time would be when they're about to start a new project and saying, or it could be you have an idea to help their business. And I feel like that's when, again, they feel like you're a team player. So I've done this before, but I just haven't ever asked for a retainer. And so then they get, because it's a big bill or something, they're like, I didn't know it was going to cost this much. And so I still give them a discount, but I'm like, well, that's how much this costs. This kind of interacting like this and me doing this kind of marketing plan and setting the stage for these, to hit these marks, because I want to see your business succeed. It would, be better if I was on retainer. And I guess it is just really making it so that they get more value because you're there in their full feet. You're not kind of running from place to place. But how many retainer clients could one person, because you're a one-man shop?
I don't know. That's probably a Johnny question, because I feel like I've got 2 or 3, and I feel like any more than that, I might go crazy, because as an independent contractor, you always have you're spinning 30 plates at a time. You've got just all these clients. So I always say I can never go on vacation because I have like 10 bosses right now who all want me doing different things at different hours and different times. And there's different communication styles and different expectations. So you find the ones that are killer, and then you really focus on those. Or you find the biggest client, or the one that biggest meaning the scope of their project is so huge, and start there and go, hey, I think I can add the value here. So I think the key is you start with one and then really work your way towards more if you have to. But it's like wading out into the ocean, like step at a time. Don't just dive head first. And
I think getting a mentor to kind of coach you through some of that might be helpful as well.
Yeah, totally. But I lucked into it rather, when kind of part of it was brought to me on one case. The other part was like, I'm really invested here, and I think this will be better for you and everybody. And I feel like they're working me harder than we agreed to initially, but I like it. Like I feel like I'm personally invested. I want to be a part of every micro visual decision they're doing, because I care about where the company and the brand and everything's going.
So like with Kevin and as your creative director, are you doing all the design work, or do you have some other designers under you?
Well, they have a staff guy who does some web stuff, and he knows how to noodle around a little bit with the web, with Photoshop and things like that. And so I'll send him some ideas, and he'll rework it. We also, it's every place is different. Kevin and Kevin and his restaurant group has like a PR company as well, and they can handle some stuff. And so instead of me resizing something 400 different ways, I create the basic creative, and then someone else does the smaller stuff for social or whatever the case may be. And it's like the Shaky Knees and the Shaky Beats Music Festival, same thing. There's a big staff of people. I'm doing a big chunk of it, and I'm doing the heavy creative, and there's someone else out of my office that I sort of direct, and we get on Basecamp, and I kind of tweak a little bit. But that's kind of where that goes. I just kind of manage them from a distance.
So I should have brought this up earlier, and I know we're about out of time.
Oh, we're good.
So you also you have this kind of side business that you make this kind of like, you made a poster and then you put the poster kind of on coffee mugs and a couple other options.
Here's the thing: as if you're busy at your job and you're doing other people's work, I feel like you barely have barely time for your own stuff. Like the cobbler's wife never has new shoes kind of deal. Where for your own self, like even my daughter recently, her birthday invitation went out and I wanted it to look killer, but I didn't have time to make it look killer, even though it's a silly little Evite thing. Like, Dad's a designer, got to make it cool. So I rarely get a chance.
Pressure.
It is super pressure. Yeah, but when you have a weird idea when you're riding a bike, or a weird idea when you're doing something, you're like, you have enough time to carve it out. That's where this came from. I like my coffee, like my metal black. I've been listening to a lot of black metal lately at the time when I created that, and I was just like, this would be a silly poster, because I was doing posters with my buddy. And then another friend says, hey, dum-dum, how come you didn't put it on a coffee mug? And then when I did, it got picked up on some social media stuff, and all of a sudden I was just grinding through mugs. Like, behind me right now, there's a bunch of them back there somewhere. But anyway, and that's just something I do for fun. And after Creative South this year, what stinks, I brought like 3 cases of these Creative South to hand out, and I gave out none of them. Because, first off, carrying around a ceramic mug, not fun. B, I just left them in my car, and they stayed there. But at Creative South, I realized there's a lot of cool artists who find extra time to, all right, John, then I'll send you one, bro. But that's it. One for the 3 of yous. So anyway, I digress. But so I after Creative South this year, realized I really need to do more of this kind of stuff. I'm most excited about it. It's the most personal. Mm-hmm. And I see a dude like Raji King, who created those cool Star Wars deals. Like, I think this thing is the coolest. Well, if I can make it work.
Yeah. There you go.
And he had buttons of it at Creative South. I'm like, I want to do that. And it's just passive income. And I know that's a big discussion at conferences and for other designers. Like, A, you can make some extra scratch. B, you're also doing what you care about. Like, being a big metalhead, all I do is design these emo and pop and garbage album covers for terrible bands sometimes. And I never do metal stuff. And so I'm like, I need to find more of a edgier outlet or something. And that's kind of where this comes from.
I didn't even know metal came in other colors.
Black. Oh,
like you said, black metal.
We should do a whole discussion about black metal.
Like, I'm so in the dark on that.
No pun intended, huh?
I know, really. Yeah. Oh, I didn't even realize I said that.
No, no. There's a lot of metal out there. There's a documentary you should watch. But anyway, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I like documentaries. Okay. You'll have to send it to me.
I will.
So, okay. So then you also do this, and this is please come up. It's the
What's that?
It's the monster poster.
Oh,
there it comes. It's coming.
This was one of those things where I should have thrown this up earlier, but this was 2006 when I was doing youth ministry. This is the kind of stuff I was doing for like church concert stuff. And this is like the moment I realized, oh, this is fun and I can actually goof around with this stuff. And this is before I ever thought like this would be fun, this would be crazy, like this would be a job. This is kind of where that came from. That just came out of my office and we had a rock show at our church and that's what that was. But yeah, I posted a few of these other images that were just old ministry stuff I used to do where I would like this one I'd doodle out or whatnot, but then there's like the fan. I don't know if you the one that's like that says all nighter. It's just like found art junk, and I would put these collages together. I think it says ministry flyer or something.
Oh yeah.
But sorry. It was just that's how I started when I got
one of them reminded me of like Max. This one reminded me of like Max Headroom. You're about my.
I remember
age.
Max.
I mean, I think I'm older than you, but boogers! How come it won't go in? Oh, there it goes. I mean, it did kind of, right?
Yeah, that was just, I didn't consider myself an artist. I was just collaging and grabbing and doing stuff. But again, you got to be careful. Then sometimes that stuff takes root. Next thing you know, you're standing here talking to you.
You're standing this whole time?
I'm sitting, sorry. No, but it's one of those deals where this is back to earlier. I was doing this while working with high school kids and dealing with their crazy parents. And so, yeah, that's where that comes from.
I love it, though. And but I love, so one of the ones I just didn't have time, but this is what I wanted to do.
Okay.
Like your head with your beard, all like, kind of like that woman with the Saturday, whatever you wrote on her face.
Oh, yeah.
But your head, so you know how she has like a bouffant,
yes,
and yours would be your beard.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, and it would be like Brian Manley in that same typeface. I was like, oh, I could trying to draw it out.
That. No.
I know, well, maybe I'll still
next
do
time.
it.
There's always next time.
Yeah, because we have to do a part 2 because we had too many problems.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
It's okay. So two last pictures you sent. So your beautiful little girl.
Oh yeah, I'll put that in the gallery because that's the reason I do everything. Really, it's all about just bust and hump. So like ever since she was born 3 years ago, just so I could pay bills to have her do cool stuff. And it's also an example, like I can buy really fun camera gear as a business expense and take cool pictures like this.
Yeah, that's a beautiful. So did you tell her look down?
No, I was testing out a brand new camera lens. It has an old analog Voigtlander lens, so it's fully manual. And she walked right in. I was like, hey, Eleanor, look at me. And of course, she doesn't listen to me. She looked right down, and I went pop, pop, and that was it. Yeah.
So what type of camera? So Shane says, I want to come. You need to come take pictures of my camera.
Deal. I'll be up there soon.
What type of camera?
It's a Sony A7R II. It's a mirrorless. I know Sony they know how to like name their cameras really well. Sony A7R II, and that was with like an old analog, old Voigtlander for a Leica. So I love throwing like old camera lenses on these new digital bodies because you kind of get that romance of the old way of doing it, but you still have like 40. This is a 45 megapixel camera where you can like just get crazy good detail.
Well, and she definitely has some of her own personality. She's got her camera. That's hers, not yours.
That would be hers, and that's how she. Yeah, I take so many pictures of her. She ends up walking around being like, "Look, Daddy, I'm taking a picture." She will grab anything that's rectangular and just be like, "Hey, I'm taking a picture of you, Daddy." Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what she does. I'm thinking, okay, cool. Maybe she'll understand. Maybe this is where she wants to go. I don't know.
So you've got a friend coming, so I got to let you go. But thank you so much for being on.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get in touch with you. So you can find Brian at funwithrobots.com. And then you can also connect with him on Twitter. He's on Twitter, Instagram, and Flickr at Brian Manley. But I'm going to actually put the links in right here so you can actually go ahead and follow him on those
Love you too,
channels.
Buddy.
And then you can also, if you really want that mug,
oh boy,
because he said he wanted to get some going, you can actually go to FWRSHOP.com, and it's what does that stand for?
Fun with Robots Shop.
Fun with Robots Shop.
I'm the dum who named his business Fun with Robots back in the mid 2000s, thinking that's clever, and I don't like it, but it works.
Oh, I love robots. And you said it was a band name. I think it's terrific.
It was, yeah. When I was in college, I used to do it. I made crappy dance music, electronic music. Yeah, not good.
It's better than any music I made. So anyway, I'm really thankful. I'm really glad I know you, and I'm glad I got to talk to you last week and this week. And thanks for being so flexible, and I'm sorry. And thanks, guys, for hanging out for a little bit longer than normal.
Sorry about that. We'll make it work again.
No problem. We will definitely get the rest of the questions answered next time. So next week I have Brooke Shear on. She's going to be talking about her whirlwind adventure in Switzerland to the Basel something. So a whole bunch of design history. And so total geeky going Germany and Switzerland. So a lot of Swiss design. So she's going to share a lot of pictures, total geek out. She's on a big grid. She's in some museums and going to give us a little design history. Wow. She's also an educator, and she also goes to Creative South, and she saw you speak whenever you spoke. Can't remember what year.
2 years
Last
ago.
year?
2 years. Yeah, 2 years.
2 years ago. Yep, she was there then.
Oh,
Then
cool.
she didn't come. Anyway, but she's back this year. So she's awesome. And I can't wait to have her on. So next week, if you want to get in touch with me, maybe you just want to tell me that somebody who you think should be on the show, just send me an email to Diane@rechargingyou.com. And that's YOU, not like U for university or I don't know what another word that starts with a U. I'm terrible at that. Anyway, Brian, you really inspire me. So thank you so much.
You.
And have fun with your friend or your client or whoever.
It's client work. Yay, client work.
Yay, pay bills.
That's true.
All right. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you, Brian.